Very good. All right. I'll get started, and we'll just start kind of walking through the slideshow. The PowerPoint. It's not super intensive, so no one needs to get stressed out. And we'll have a couple opportunities for people to kind of share some discussion questions or prompts or things like that in the mix too. But to get things started, let me first introduce myself and kind of tell you a little bit about me and who I am. My name is Alex Thomas. I'm the Director of Enrollment at the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service. We are a graduate school in the University of Arkansas system, and we're another presidential school similar to others. We're a nonpartisan state school. There's like the Bush School at Texas A&M. There's the LBJ School at UT Austin. There's the Ford School at University of Michigan. Clinton School with Arkansas, and we're nonpartisan. We're state schools, but presidential schools have an area of focus, and many of them are focused on government, or public policy, or public admin, which are all great. And when President Clinton opened the school 15, almost 16 years ago, his desire was to focus it on public service and serving the public good. So we have a lot of national resonance with a lot of Bonner people, AmeriCorps people, Peace Corps people, other kind of volunteer corps, faith-based and international domestic groups. And so I'm thrilled that you decided to come to this session, which isn't specifically about the Clinton School. I'll have a couple slides in there that talk a little bit about us, but it's more broad about how grad school in general can prepare you for this world that we're in. So again, my name is Alex. You can call me Alex. And I've been at the Clinton School now for 12 years, been in higher ed for about 25 years. And I'm from Illinois, originally born and raised, which is partly why I went around the horn and asked for people's geography, because I'm interested in just knowing where people are at. But I'm in Arkansas now, and it's great to connect with all of you today. So with that, we can get started. So the first slide is kind of an obvious slide. These are interesting times. Yes, we have economic kind of variables that are going in some different directions. We've got this thing called the coronavirus. We've got a lot of very important social issues right now, and protests, and people are mobilized and out. And it's all very interesting times right now. And you all as Bonners, you guys are wired for service. You guys are wired for seeing the world with like bigger eyes and bigger ears than what most people are. But these days are definitely crying out for us to see with new eyes and new ears about ways that we can impact the world. So these are historically interesting times. For many, these are hard days, but for some, the hard days can be opportunities for change days, like where we can really change who we are, what society is. We have to be willing to do that. And so a general kind of thought is, what if these days, heavy as they may be, are meant to deliver something new? People that know me and know me well know that I love quotes. And so I have three kind of different kinds of quotes, but all in the same theme. The first are words by Sonia Renee Taylor, talking about the past and today, and how encouraging that we should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment. That's what these days possibly could be. For those who are Game of Thrones fans, I'll throw in a shout out to Peter Baelish. Lord Baelish famously said that chaos isn't a pit, chaos is a ladder. Meaning there's opportunity, right? When we're stuck in this world, where in the swirl of all these different crazy news stories, and it's overwhelming, it is. But to look at it from a different framework of, this is not a pit that we're being sunk into, this is a ladder. This is an opportunity for us to climb and to rise into something new. And so chaos can maybe be a good thing. And then the third quote, by Haruki Murakami. This is a quote that I love very much, that once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about. And so these days right now could be viewed differently, of not just being chaos, not just being painful, not just being hard. It is all these things, but two things can be true at the same time. It can be hard and difficult, but can also be opportunity. It can also be a ladder. It can also be a storm that's meant to make us different than when we started. So that said, here we are. And here we are in a world that is crying out for help on all levels and all communities. And here we are, a group of passionate public servants in Bonnerland who care about these cries, right? And as Bertrand Russell famously said, one must care about a world one will not see, meaning we need to care about the world today, but we don't see the future. We don't see tomorrow. We don't see a year from now. We don't see 5 years from now. We need to care about that. And the work you all have done as Bonners, the work that we're doing at the Clinton School, the work that I think we're seeing in society right now is focused on the world that is tomorrow. And that's exciting. So that said, a couple different reflections I want to throw out there to ask, what do I see? Ask you all to consider that. These 3 questions: what things am I specifically noticing about the world today in some new and deeper ways than what I did maybe 2-3 months ago? What are some specific responses that I wish I could bring to what I'm noticing? And what lessons and wisdom do I think these days are showing me right now? So making it very personal. With that, I'd love it if we could all take about 30 seconds. I'll even put a little clock up myself, where you can reflect on these 3 questions. And then I'd love it if we wanted to kind of go around the horn and kind of unmute and kind of share what some of those prompts might be for you. So right now, if you could take just a few seconds, 30 seconds, to think about these 3 questions in a personal way, not in a societal way, but in a me and an I way. What is that saying to you? What things are you specifically noticing about the world in new and deeper ways than what you had before? And what are specific responses that you wish you could bring to what you're seeing? And what lessons and wisdom do you think these days are showing you right now? All right, with that, I'm wondering if there might be even just a handful of folks that could just unmute, say your name, and share your response. I think Carr is raising a hand, and feel free to unmute and just kind of share. Carr, say your name and what your responses to those 3 questions might be.
Yes. Do I have to answer all 3 or just pick like one of them?
You can pick one, but if you want to do all 3, that's totally fine.
I'm just gonna do one.
Pick one is fine. Yeah.
My name's Carleni, and I'm from Montclair State. And I guess the first question I had an answer for instantly. And so, what things am I specifically noticing about the world? And I never understood how being silent can be complicit in so many things. Yeah. And I feel like this time really, really shows that. Like those people who might not necessarily support the cause, even though it's like human rights cause, so I don't know about that, but you can just see how in these hard times you really see the truth of people and where they really stand. So definitely that. And in that same sense, from myself, what I've learned is that not to engage, because we always get told to educate people, but it's just I'm not a teacher, I'm tired, this has been going on like this for too long. So I'm not interacting, but I'm still being very loud about what I believe in. And that's
no, and I appreciate your point where now is a time to get engaged, right? And different people get engaged in different ways. Like some get engaged by literally taking to the streets. Others get engaged by starting with themselves and say, hey, I want to read some books. I want to learn a bit more. So I may not do a lot vocally. I may not do a lot taking to the streets yet, but for me, I want to start somewhere else. And my point is there's a range between those are just 2 options. There's a lot of things in between. but all of it's important. I think all of us need to kind of say, okay, what do I need to do right now to be engaged? And for some, it's I'm going to organize a protest. And for others, it's I'm going to read about what a protest really is. And so thank you, Car, for sharing that. Others, like what are, just feel free to unmute, share your name, and you can pick one of these questions or even answer all three. That would be great.
I'll go ahead and go. I'm Olivia. I'm from
Thanks, Olivia.
Rhodes. I guess sort of going off of what you said about engagement, I think something I've noticed in a deeper way is that it's a lot less lonely in the world than I think I always sort of perceived it to be.
Yeah, I
Because
like
it's
that.
very easy to sort of get in like my little bubble of my friends group or like the people I usually speak to on campus and be like, these are the only people who care about the same issues that I do, because they're the only people that I ever see speaking out about them or talking about them in conversations, whereas other people sort of like stayed silent. But I think in recent days, I've seen a lot of people sort of like show their engagement and their caring in different forms and fashions. So a lot of people who like I'm close with, they may have never said anything to me in person before or shared anything online, but I'm seeing them engaged at protests and marches and other forms without necessarily saying anything about it.
Right.
So I think it's showing that there are a lot of people that are sort of like frustrated and have the same ideals, even if they don't express it the same way. And it's important to know that a lot of people do want the same change, just bringing it about in different ways.
And that's so encouraging, right? Like
Exactly.
One of the most paralyzing things, my background is in psychology, and one of the most paralyzing things in the world is for any of us to feel like we're alone, like that either we're literally kind of physically alone or that I'm the only one that feels this way. Nobody else has this opinion, point of view, all of that. And so to your point, I love that you and all of us have been able to see, hey, there are a lot of people that feel these, that have these opinions or observations, and it's good to know that we're not alone. So I love that. So others, I'd love it if we get another couple to respond to any one or all three of these reflections. Lessons and wisdom that you think you're seeing, what specific responses you'd like to bring to the world, things like that. Just unmute and share your name. Jessica.
Hi. So yes, my name is Jessica. I am from New Jersey. I wanted to tackle the third questions. What lessons and wisdom do I think these days are showing me? And one of the things that came to my mind was how unity really makes change, and when you really want to fight for something that is truly right, especially because it is a human rights movement, what we're going through with the Black Lives Matter movement, change can really come about. And I think that a great example of that is that a couple of days ago, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that New Jersey released that they were going to, I forgot the exact wording of it, but that New Jersey was going to review their law enforcement strategies. And I think that was huge. I think that a lot of people were speaking out and really trying to deliver the message. And it's a great example as to like that we were heard in a way, especially because from the protests that we've been seeing in New Jersey, a lot of them have been really peaceful, which is good. And I think that it delivered the right message to New Jersey. Not saying that the protesting that weren't peaceful is bad, because people just get tired. Like there's a point where you just feel like you want to put your hands down and it's like enough is enough. So the way that people are responding is 100% right. And yeah, I feel like unity is really bringing upon change, and we can see it happening now. I feel like and also something that I learned, I don't know how to not to connect the two, I don't know how I would phrase this, but I learned that the LGBTQ movement, I think it was Stonewall, started off as a riot, and I had no idea about that. And I feel that it's important to look back on our history and see how so many important changes were brought about And some of them had to do with riots. And I think it was interesting. It's a good reflection on what's happening now, because even though some of them are turning into riots or are becoming a bit violent, I feel like sometimes that is necessary to shake things up.
Yeah, and that is a great lesson, and part of the wisdom that we're seeing these days is that the wisdom and lessons that come from history. I think you're exactly right. When you read about Stonewall, even going earlier, when you read about the Boston Tea Party, right? Like, none of these things were polite kind of discussions. Like, what started this, what, like, the Boston Tea Party was a disruptive riot. They literally took property, tea, and dumped it into the Boston Harbor, and we kind of sanitize a lot of history over time. That we make things look a lot softer and cleaner and linear. You know, even like many people will share quotes by MLK, and there's amazing inspired quotes by MLK, but there are also some very blunt quotes by MLK that are part of the medicine that we all need to understand. And so, to your point, not everything is kind of linear and just kind of clean and sanitized. Like, there's some really like ugly parts to movements and to awareness building. And I'm not saying that to incite violence or call for that, but it's just kind of, to your point, it's kind of understanding history and all these things that have happened over time. So thank you. Let's have one other person share, another Bonner, if they could unmute and kind of share their thoughts on any one of these three questions.
I can go. Oh,
okay. Nope, we'll do two more then. Yeah, we'll do Sheila, and then I think there was somebody else too. We'll do two more.
okay. So I guess just piggybacking, especially off of Olivia, in like sorry, I'm Sheila. Our generations, or like the college generation right now, just having a greater understanding for the world and like seeking that information for ourselves, and also acknowledging the fact that America's public school system is very whitewashed, and we don't understand a lot of the things. So then going back to the Black Lives Matter movement, I would say one thing that the last couple of weeks have taught me is to like stay consistent with like the conversations I'm trying to have with people.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm a white girl and I come from a conservative family. And so having those conversations, I used to get very like aggressive with, like finding myself upset and like for people not understanding where I was coming from. And like staying consistent and having conversations that were bringing in all of the information instead of just going off of what they were saying back to me and reacting off of that.
Yeah.
Staying consistent is something that has really helped me over the last couple of weeks, trying to make a difference, at least within like my household.
Right.
I unfortunately can't go protest because I work in the healthcare field, and if I brought coronavirus back to my pediatrics office, that would not be good.
Sure.
But I found that's something that I can do specifically for myself and for the rest of my community in my neighborhood. And I'm like reaching out to people and having this conversation. So definitely consistency.
And consistency is critical, because I think we all need to kind of know where we stand on something and know what our values and our worldviews are being built around, and not have it change from day to day to day. I think what buttresses that for me, and I appreciate your point, is also simultaneously being willing to grow and change and develop. And so for any of us, I think that's a sign of maturity, right? Is when we get new information and new knowledge, that we kind of expand what we thought, that we don't just kind of develop a truth at a certain age and then maintain that necessarily until the day we die. But to instead continue to reflect on that. And maybe you do hold it until the day you die, but maybe it expands and maybe it gets more nuanced and more expansive. And I think that's part of what these days are teaching us. Is it's a great opportunity to learn more about ourselves, about the world, about the plight of somebody else. And I think that's exciting. Thank you for sharing. And I think there was another person that had simultaneously hopped in. I'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, that was me. I'm Madeline. again. And I was drawn to that first question. And I think what I'm specifically noticing about the world in maybe like a deeper way are just the broken systems that govern our country and our societies today. Not that that is necessarily anything new, but I think these specific incidents that are causing a lot of our demonstrations and these conversations that we're having, there are specific incidents that are really symptoms of structural issues that are going to take a lot of effort to heal. And I feel like that kind of ties into the third question for me too. I feel like I'm learning a lot about my community and my generation, because I think I'm proud of us, you know, for seeing something that's so awful and deciding this is the time to create the opportunity for conversations, to have difficult conversations, and to show up when we need to. And so that has been, you know, this is a really bad time, but I'm also feeling just that sense of solidarity and pride for people who are using crisis as an opportunity.
No, and thank you for sharing that, because I definitely track with that. I think, as the quotes I shared earlier might have framed, like, these are painful times. I mean, people are on the COVID side, on the social issue side, like, people are dying, literally and figuratively. Like, none of that is good. That said, I think these are also very inspired times, because they're showing all of us in a way that maybe wouldn't have otherwise got our attention, right? Is we have to, like, have something, unfortunately, oftentimes something so big to kind of like grab our eyes and grab our ears that everyone can see it. Because this, you know, as you saw earlier this week, there were protests in all 50 states in the United States this week. And that hasn't happened since the 60s, right? It's been 50 years since all 50 states on one day have had a shared protest. COVID is something that is affecting everybody. It doesn't matter what country you're in, a developing country, a developed country, a rich country, poor country. If you're black, white, brown, it doesn't matter. If you're Republican or Democrat, if you're Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, like, it's something that has all of our attention, and that is sobering when something that big happens. But it's also really enabling and inspiring, to your point, to say, all right, like, you have our attention. Like, what is it that we can all learn from? And to the quotes earlier, how can we come out of this storm differently than we were when we went into the storm? So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for everyone that kind of shared those thoughts. So kind of pivoting, I love these thoughts that you're all reflecting on, and pivoting from there, grad school, and that's kind of what the session was about, can be an investment into the new normal of our future. Right now, the world is in a unique shift. The job market is very unsettled, but the grad school market, oftentimes when the job market's kind of depressed, the grad school market is a area of growth, because we're very open to meet the world in this shifting space. In this time of COVID and protest, people, as we're demonstrating today, can more thoughtfully prepare for a world of new systems, needs that are being exposed and developed, and the opportunities then that rise to bring sustainable change. Grad school can be an investment in both that personal and societal direction. We are not silos. We're kind of talking about that. We're not stray ships at sea. We're kind of being brought to a space where we can shift from a me to a we. And a question for you, similar to before discussion, you can unmute and share. What does a society that shifts from a me to a we look like for you? It's very easy for when everything is comfortable to just make everything about me. One of my favorite authors is Chuck Klosterman, and he writes about how social media has kind of turned us into that space of a me, because it's easy for any of us in our Klosterman's an essayist, and he's written essays that talk about it, where it's very easy for any of us to think, well, I'm the center of my world, right? Like, I get up in the morning, I feed myself, I take a shower, I run an errand, all about me. Because it's very easy for us to think that I'm the center of my world. And with social media, it's made it even easier for us to then extrapolate to think, well, I'm then the center of everyone's world, and I'm going to post it and I'm going to talk about it. Like, and so it's about a me focus, right? But these days are maybe broadening that out to a we. And so for you, what does a society that shifts from a me to a we look like? Love it if some of y'all wanted to share. What does a we society look like? Or how do we get to a we society?
Okay, I guess I'll go. The first thing that came to my mind, I'm Jessica, I'm from Montclair State.
Yep.
The first thing that came to my mind, that probably came to everyone's mind was using the privilege that one person has in the benefit of the other person.
Yeah.
I feel like we've been seeing through a lot of videos that we've seen online about the protests that there are white passing people who are standing up or defending people of color. And that's something that is very powerful and honestly it's kind of like a breath of fresh air, because it's almost like you're finally seeing that people are noticing that they have that privilege, because there still are people who genuinely believe that white privilege doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's very refreshing to see that people are showing that it is real and using it to the advantage of the other person. So I feel like that is a good example of how I feel like we are shifting, whether it be slowly, into a we society, because we are using some advantages and some benefits that we have in just to help another person. And I think recognizing that within itself is also helping that shift.
No, I agree very much with you. I love that example you shared. I think, I also think about it in the framework of COVID, and as people were wearing masks, and at first maybe people were wearing masks because, oh, I don't want to get COVID. I don't want to, breathe something. And that's very valid. That's very fair.
That's also a great example. I like that too.
But I also love how that grew to, hey, I don't want to wear a mask I want to wear a mask because I don't want somebody else to get COVID. Like, what if I'm carrying it and I don't realize that? And so I'm going to wear a mask, not just for me, but for somebody else. And I think that was like a really interesting shift too, of how COVID and with your example with the protests and privilege systems, right? To say, hey, what if I use my privilege not just for me? What if I used the opportunity to wear a mask not just for me, but for others? And I talked about a lot in some presentations to say, even for someone who's exceedingly selfish, so that's the only thing they want to think about, like this idea of a we society serves that interest too. If the only thing I want to care about is yourself, then recognizing that, hey, if other people don't get COVID, that's in my best interest. If other communities are educated, that's in my best interest. If other homes in my neighborhood are well kept and are safe and police protection or whatever, that's in my best interest too. And so it really is this idea of a rising tide raising all the boats, not just my boat. So other thoughts from anyone else? Maybe if somebody else would like to share that idea of a me to a we.
Yeah, I think I'm not on mute. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to expand on that COVID analogy, right? Like the people that are asymptomatic, kind of think about them as the people that aren't, like, you're carrying it, you're walking around with privilege, right? So in a sense, we all have some type of privilege, whether we recognize it or not, right?
Right.
For some of us, it might be like experience with the community, right? We're in a community, so we're privileged to know certain people within the community that we do service work, that we engage with them, right? So we can use that privilege of knowing, like, being around community members and knowing what they want to transfer that and to voice for them to policymakers, right?
Right. So,
but being asymptomatic and not knowing that you had the privilege and then just going around with it and just spreading it, you're focused on the me and just worry about you. But then as a we, you're hindering like the society that you're living in, right? And then right now, like how the protest is going on, and then we're all at home, we're all social distancing, is because everyone was so focused on the me, that now everything is spread around, so we're all at a hut. So how can we change that mindset moving forward so that we recognize like the different privileges that we have, as well as bettering the community, as you said.
Right. No, thank you for sharing that. I agree. Like, I mean, I think that's, I guess the point I'm trying to talk around is like, I think that is what this new normal is going to be. Like, I think that's one of the inspired things about everything we're dealing with right now is that this isn't going to go away in a week or two. These protests aren't just going to go away tomorrow. COVID's not going to go away for a while. And so I think in that there's opportunity for us to think about, okay, like, how can I invest in myself? How can I invest more in a better societal direction? And that's where I think kind of the point of our gathering today is maybe grad school is a way that can help do that. So some of you, I think if you decided to sign up for this, you obviously have some baseline interest in grad school. And I'll share a little bit about our specific program at the Clinton School, but I'll also talk more broadly about grad school in general. And from that framework, thank you for coming if you're interested in grad school, and maybe this discussion, and maybe even beyond this discussion, you've been thinking like, what steps can I take? And there are kind of three assessments I would suggest to kind of be helpful to frame this. The first is kind of a self-assessment. And that's what we've been doing a bit already. What cries are you noticing in your immediate world? Like, what would you like to do in the world in the coming future? It could be career path, but it could also be just a missional path that maybe involves career, but maybe it involves volunteering or just being an activist in your community. But what are those things you'd like to do in the world in the coming future? Not necessarily 20 years from now, but even a year from now, like in the immediacy, in the coming year, in the next 12 months. So a self-assessment. It could be different things for different people. You might be interested in like criminal justice reform. You might be interested in public health issues. You might be interested in immigration issues. You might be interested in running for office. You might be interested in building out policy or being a researcher to pull together data. It doesn't necessarily need to be the front of the camera. It could be behind the camera, behind the scenes, working on stuff. So for any of you, like thinking about that, the self-assessment, what would you like to do? Second point is an opportunity assessment. Are there grad programs that might equip you for that kind of work? So for somebody who wants to do more of the data analytics, there could be grad programs focused on that. There's a lot of mental health issues going on right now, directly related to COVID and protests and social issues, but also just the weight of the world we're living in now, where people have been quarantined and we've been isolated. And so for some, it might be, hey, I want to maybe look at a master's of social work or a master's in therapy, psychology, like that kind of thing to kind of help the world. But for you individually, like what are those opportunities then that you think could benefit your interest? The other thing is a timing assessment. When would you like to take those steps toward your vision of a new future? So for some, it could be, hey, in the next couple of years, this is where I want to land. I want to land in a grad program. In the next 4 to 5 years, I want to be employed in this space doing this kind of work. So to be employed in this space in the next 5 years, what are the things I need to do now to build toward that? Many grad schools, like the Clinton School, have opened a new COVID-specific deadline. Our normal application deadline is at the end of January, right around the end of January, beginning of February. And when the COVID stuff happened, but now increasingly with the protests and this kind of call for public service, the world is crying out for public service. And so we, as a school of public service, decided to relaunch a dedicated window for these times of public service. So about a month or two, we kind of relaunched a window. And I'll talk a little bit about now the Clinton School, but then kind of come back to more broadly grad school in general. So to take a step back, kind of start with what is the Clinton School of Public Service. I alluded to this at the intro when I introduced myself. We're a 2-year nonpartisan graduate program in the University of Arkansas system. We're not located though on the U of A campus. We're located on the grounds of the Clinton Presidential Center in downtown Little Rock. We're founded in 2004 by the University of Arkansas and President Clinton. We offer the nation's first Master's of Public Service degree, and then a 100% online Clinton School online degree, and that's for mid-career professionals to allow them to work anywhere in the world, to work full-time job, to live geographically anywhere, but still do our master's degree. We also have concurrent degrees with an MBA business, MPH, Master's of Public Health, and a JD law degree. So there's lots of different kinds of focuses that we have. I'll be talking in the next slide about the MPS, Master Public Service degree. That's designed with both a classroom curriculum and fieldwork component. Bonners love the hands-on component, and so that degree very much focuses on the hands-on and the doing in the world. So what makes us unique? We have a broad spectrum of public service programming for a diverse student body, and I say diverse across a lot of different definitions. For the MPS program, I'm looking to enroll between 35 and 45 students every August. And of that 35 to 45 students, there's a range of interests, backgrounds, academic areas of study. Last year's cohort, I enrolled 41 students, and in that group, there were 23 different academic majors in those 41 students, so a large number. Of those 41 students, the age range was age 22 to 61. So we had students in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and older. We had people interested in public service issues, poverty issues, gender issues, racial issues, economic issues, for-profit issues, nonprofit issues, government work, policy issues, domestic, international, health, legal, immigration, you name it, all different kinds of public servants, 360 degree of public servants I'm looking to bring into the program. And then while in the program, students have the freedom to then pursue that public service interest most meaningful to them. They do that through the field work that they choose, the elective coursework they choose, and go from there. And we're also one of the most affordable graduate programs in America. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but by design, we didn't want public service to be cost prohibitive. We didn't want people to go to a grad program, take $1 million worth of debt and loans, and then not be able to go into public service because they have to pay these bills, right? So our degree is one of the most affordable programs anywhere in the country. I'll talk about that in a moment. And lastly, on this bullet point, the innovative and integrative program. Classroom work that teaches soft skills and hard skills. Soft skills can be theories of communication, theories of community engagement, understanding systems of power and privilege and oppression. Hard skills can be program design, project management, data analysis. How do you run data? How do you collect data? How do you build sustainable solution based on data? That's what we work to teach in our classroom. And then that then continues into the field. There are 3 different field projects our students need to complete by the time they graduate. The first is domestic in the state of Arkansas. The second is international, serving an international community in a foreign country. And the third and final project is a capstone, and that can be the culminating project that can be anywhere. Here in Arkansas, in another city in the United States, or in another country around the world. So we're very hands-on, and Bonner students love that. This is kind of the last slide about the Clinton School. From its founding, as I mentioned, we didn't want to be cost prohibitive. We're a 40 credit hour program. We're only $420 a credit hour. So that's $16,800 total tuition and fees for the entire 2-year degree. So our student debt load is decidedly lower than most grad schools anywhere in the country. We have generous merit scholarships, including for Bonner folks as well. So that $16,800 sticker price does come down once the scholarships are included. We also provide a stipend for that summer international service project to cover the plane tickets, living accommodations, food, all of that for that summer work, serving an international community. And so if you're interested in the Quinn School, we can talk much more about that. My email, I'll put that at the final slide and in a chat if you're interested. But our specific COVID and kind of state of the world kind of deadline is Monday, June 15th. And that's where you can submit the application there. Our application is very straightforward and user-friendly. There's no application fee. There's no GRE or grad school test required. It's just your resume, a couple essays, your transcripts from undergrad, and then a couple of recommendation letters. And that's all that's required to be considered for both admission and scholarship for this August. So some of you, if you're looking for some next steps starting for this August, I invite you to look at the Clinton School. But beyond the Clinton School, kind of broadening it out a bit, there are also other many great grad programs that love you Bonner alumni. Bonner alums are a very coveted and desired group of people, not just for us at the Clinton School, but for many schools. So at that point, I'd encourage you to research other Bonner partner schools. If today's conversations, but even beyond today's conversations, you've already been percolating about this, I'd encourage you to then take that inspiration and go back and look at Bonner partner schools, research the Bonner Learning Community online and Bonner Connect. Those online portals are great opportunities. Reach out to other Bonner alumni who share similar public service interests with you. And so if you're someone interested in criminal justice reform, if you're someone that's interested in public health issues, if you're someone interested in serving international communities, research a Bonner alumni network and your own Bonner kind of network here personally to say, hey, like, here's people that share that interest. Let me see what they did. Let me look at what grad schools they looked into. I'd encourage you, frankly, to just take your shot, kind of that final bullet point. I think you owe it to yourself and your future and the world, as we're talking about, because we need that Bonner spirit. These days are asking much of us. They're showing us a lot. And we have an opportunity to respond to this call. Bonner alumni have a rich record of service, and I promise you the world needs that right now. And as a higher ed professional myself, I've been in higher ed for 25 years, I encourage you all to consider the next step to grad school. Even for this fall 2020, there are a lot of us schools out there, Clinton School, but many others, that have opened up a special dedicated window because the world is kind of going sideways right now. And we realize there are many people that might be reconsidering opportunities for this fall. There are opportunities that are there. So I encourage you to invest in yourself and invest in the world's cries to build new systems, right? All these different things we're seeing. Let's build new systems. Let's stitch a new garment. And let's figure out a path forward. So there's an opportunity that grad school can provide you. So with that, I want to thank you all for signing up today. See what questions you have. That's my name and my email, and a candid screenshot of our school founder, President Clinton, photobombing a sad little girl who was very happy about a second after that photo was taken. But with that, I just want to open it up for any questions that you may have. And just kind of unmute yourself and share your question, share your thought. Happy to answer them, not even just about the Clinton School, but about grad school in general and about the opportunities that exist. Anyone? My ramblings might have been so thorough that there may not be any questions, but
I have a question regarding like the online component of it for like people who are
mid-career.
Yeah. So is there like a limitation on like the online, because I know you're saying that they have to do like 3 different field work. That's for the public service, right?
Yes, no, and that's a great question. I can definitely clarify that. With what I presented about was the MPS, the in-person program.
Okay.
But I can talk about a bit the online program. So the in-person program enrolls every August, the MPS program. The Clinton School Online, or CSO, is the same coursework, but it's just packaged differently to accommodate for people that are working full-time and living wherever they live. So to answer your question, the MPS enrolls in August. The CSO cohort, I typically look to enroll about 30 students for CSO, and that enrolls every March. And so the next CSO cohort will enroll in March 2021, about 30 some students living everywhere domestically and around the world, allows them to work full-time, live where they want to, and do the program. The way that is packaged then is it's structured as 1 class at a time. Each class is 2 months long. So it's the same 12 courses, but in the MPS program, those courses and fieldwork are packaged in traditional academic semesters, where someone might be taking 3 to 4 classes a semester in the fall and the spring, the summer project, and then fall and spring. But for CSO, the Clinton School Online, it's 1 class at a time, 12 classes, 2 months apiece, 24 straight months. So it's still a 2-month program, but faculty estimate it's about probably 15 plus or minus hours per week of content, watching videos, readings, assignments, things like that. Most students can do that over evenings and weekends to knock out those 15 or so hours a week. So it's still pretty life manageable and user-friendly in that regard, especially allowing you to work full-time and work during the day and all of that. And there's just the 1 field project for the CSO. So for the MPS, there's 3 projects: Practicum, International Project, and Capstone. For the CSO, it's just the capstone. So it's just the culminating project at the end. And the capstone is done with a partner in your local community. So we want people who are living in New Jersey to invest in New Jersey, right? To find a partner in New Jersey that resonates with that public service interest that's meaningful to you. For another classmate, for 5 different classmates, it could be 5 different public service interests that you all want to plug into. But for the individual, we want them to find a partner organization in their local community and invest in your local community. Because when you finish the CSO program, you're hopefully going to be living in that community, staying in that community, and continuing to build and pour into that community. But now doing it with a greater effectiveness, because you've learned the soft skills and hard skills that those individual courses have equipped you to do. And so you aren't just kind of in volunteer mode or in like meaningful citizen mode, but to say, hey, let's triangulate, let's strategize, let's pull partners together, let's build sustainable solution. And that's what our program equips people to do, both in the CSO and in the MPS. But the CSO is done the one class at a time, while the MPS program is done in more traditional academic semesters and have 3 field projects instead of the 1 field project. So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Great. Other questions that people may have?
Hi, I have one question specific to Clinton School.
Yeah.
You said that there were merit scholarships. Are there also any need-based scholarships also available to international students?
Yes, there are. And for that, we determine that based on like the strength of the application file. So a completed application will render both an admission decision and a scholarship decision. And then there are private need-based scholarships that are available for international students as well.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions anyone may have? Well, I know our time is kind of running short. I think we're supposed to go to noon. It's about, we're getting close to noon right now. But my email is there on that last slide. You can write that down, aethomas@clintonschool.uasys.edu. UASYS means University of Arkansas System.edu. I encourage you to go to the Clinton School website. There's a lot of information there, both on the MPS and the CSO. For any of you interested in applying to the Clinton School, even for this fall, I bring up again that there's no application fee, there's no GRE or grad school requirement. And as I do presentations and talk to a lot of students, I encourage them to say, hey, even if you don't know exactly what your August 2020 may look like, maybe you're looking at a lot of different options, applying for jobs or other grad programs. Since our application fee doesn't have an app fee or a GRE requirement, it doesn't cost you anything to apply. And in addition to that, the act of applying doesn't commit you to anything. So it's possible for you to simply apply, see if you get admitted and what level of scholarship you get. And then from there, if you are admitted, you can make a decision to enroll or not. There's no penalty to not enrolling. We just want to meet with people, especially as a school of public service. We want to meet with all these public servants in the reality of this world and the space that we're living in right now. So we've reopened an application window. We want to work with interested applicants. So if you or others in your network that you think, hey, I know people in the Bonner Network, or I know people just in my life, that this kind of MPS program might really be kind of hit them where they live. And so you can feel free to give them my email, send them a link to the Quinn School website, and I'm happy to work with them. The deadlines that we're working with now is June 15th.